Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at cream or yellow toned fur and the colours used to create a realistic effect. So if this is something that you're struggling with, then keep on watching. There's also going to be a surprise colour towards the end of this tutorial, so make sure you carry on watching. As with all videos in this series, I'm going to focus on more of the colours and the layering process and not really the fur technique, as that was covered in the very first video of this series, and I'll link it as a card up above if you want to check that out first. So let's start with the base layers. For this tone of fur, I like to start with an ivory colour instead of a warm or cool grey. The ivory just adds more warmth, which is really needed to bring this to life, and it acts in the same way as a grey base tone. You basically use it to depict the direction and the motion of the fur, and it gives your further pencil layers something to work on. Once that layer is down, I work over some cream and start to build the subtle yellow tones. And again, this kind of acts like a base layer, and I mainly add this to the areas which contain the darker tones. You want to make sure you use a light hand for this, layer really lightly, as too much pressure with this will just add down way too much yellow tone. So use a really light hand with this colour. Next, I use a light flesh pencil, and this may seem like a really odd choice to some people, but it gives the colours added over the top a really subtle sort of golden orange glow, and it works really well in conjunction with the further colours I'm going to add. Again, I add this mainly to the darker areas, and I use a combination of shading back and forth and some fur lines to build the tone. I also blend out with light pressure into the lighter areas just by using a few fur lines. Next, I like to use a dark Naples ochre, and I use this lightly to glaze colour over the top of the light flesh, as it creates a really nice soft peachy tone, which is perfect for the darker patches on this type of fur. I continue to darken the shadows with some burnt ochre, again using this lightly and avoiding putting too much pigment down at once. The trick is to build multiple light layers and increase the tone that way. I use less layers and blend out into the light sections of the fur with some fur lines and a little shading and glazing. Next, I do exactly the same thing but with a raw umber, and this adds that natural earthy yellow which you often see on this fur. And once I've added enough layers, I blend over the top with light flesh and cream to help smooth out the tones and bring it to life a little bit more. You could also use a white pencil to do the blending, but I find that using the lighter tones in this colour palette, especially on this colour palette, makes it look a little bit more realistic. I add a little warm grey one to the lighter areas next, and add a little texture with some fur lines to continue the texture on from the darker areas that we've been working on. I couple this with some more burnt ochre and start to depict some of the darker strand shadows in the lighter areas before blending out once more with some light flesh. I repeat using the mid-tone colours until I'm really happy with how the dark tones are looking and it's all nicely blended out. Then it's time to add the darkest colour and pick out a few more defined fur strands. I use a walnut brown and it does a really good job at doing this, and I just use this really lightly and add a few fur lines throughout the whole patch of fur, so into the dark and the light areas. Now you don't want to add too many fur lines with this colour as it will start looking really muddy, so you want to use this really sparingly. This is where the final colour comes in, and I add a sky blue colour. And why this, I hear you ask? Well, this tone added to the lighter sections gives a really nice sense of light. It really lifts the whiter sections up, and added into the darker sections creates a nice shadow tone without the fur going muddy. So it's a really nice tone to use over the entire thing. And I use this like all of the other tones and gently layer down using some fur lines, and I depict a few of the more prominent areas as well, so some of the shadows in between the fur lines I use this for. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I just go back over with some more mid-tones and add some blending and make sure all of the contrast is right, and if it's not, then I just go in and adjust by darkening the mid-tones. So I try and leave the lighter areas as light as possible, just a minimal tone with the warm grey one and a little bit of walnut brown, a little bit of sky blue, just to kind of give it a little bit of texture. But the main chunk of this is in the shadows, so much like we would depict a white fur. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This colour of fur is really easy to depict, and I always love using this colour palette. It's one of my favourites to draw. Actually, I say this about all of the fur colours. They're all my favourites. I really hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you now feel a little bit more confident when trying to create your cream or yellow toned fur. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of the videos I'm uploading each week to this fur series. And if this is the first video that you're watching, then go ahead and follow the playlist for this series. There's a couple of tutorials in a backlog in that playlist for you guys. Let me know in the comments below which part of this tutorial helped you the most, and if you'd like me to make a separate video out of anything coloured, leave your comments down below for me because I love to read them. If you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up with that button below, and I can't wait to share more of this fur series with you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!